But I never get angry while typing because mad on the internet is not way to go. So hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Five of the Week. We've taken I think 2 weeks in a row off because I uh, don't want to do or be forced to do recordings when I'm on a donation week because that just doesn't make sense. In the past I did those, but it is what it is. Today we're joined not by the uh, traveling Danger Golding, but Nepto instead. What's going on?
How are you doing? I feel like Danger is not a co-host anymore because I feel like I have been on more episodes than he was since this one was revived. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. There's something to that because obviously in the earlier versions of Five of the Week, it was Danger Golding for like 6 episodes, but then it turned to Pancake. So yeah, I suppose I get along even better with the German people than Danger Golding.
I've
Maybe.
never spoken to ACP, if I'm honest.
Uh,
We have written a lot when when I was still new in the league, but since then I haven't seen him a ton. But you have him in Pittsburgh now, don't you?
yeah, unfortunately, he said the other week that he's gonna again take a little bit of a break after this player, since after Finn Zenglein um had retired, I think he was away for at least 2 seasons before creating Isaac Cannon. So maybe he'll do that again. Maybe he'll take a longer break, maybe even a shorter break, or who knows. But that's what at least he us the other week. But yeah, he is currently on Pittsburgh and doing quite well. So, since the conversational format of where we ask questions of their SBA, uh, like career and history and sim league stuff and personal life, that was all Danger Golding's idea, and I'm not keen on trespassing into people's personal lives. And Nipto has already been here quite a few times. We're just gonna stick to good old sports radio stuff. And yeah, we've gone through 2 sims in season 58 now. And the third sim I expect is going to be later today still.
Yeah, at least that's what was announced back then. So we have like 12 games, 14 games on average. I don't know if
Yeah,
it's a
right
lot.
now, by the time of recording at least, yes.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
there's still one sim outstanding before everything closes off for the week.
Mm. So it's in the West Division, it's Arizona Inferno with 11 wins to 2 losses, and then the Houston Ravens with 9 wins to 2 losses. So only one game back since the looks like they played each other, and Houston is 2 games down. Well, no, that's not actually how the thing works. It just means, yeah. So with 2 more wins in their next 2 games, they're even on record. And in the Eastern Division, it's the Pittsburgh Ironmen with 13 wins and 1 loss, having played the most games out of all in league so far this season. And the reigning champion Charlotte Aviators with 8 wins, 2 losses, 3 games back. Um, uh, Well, I had prepared like an actual topic here, but I'm just gonna ask you first of all, what's been your main takeaway, like the biggest storyline that's gonna start to build up, that you expect to start building up during the season?
So in my mind, I have two major competitions with prime guys that are fairly similar. For once, we've got obviously between the Inferno and the Ravens, Grant Thompson.
You've cut out there. Let's hold on for a small bit of technical problems. Grant
Uh,
Thompson, yeah.
my headset decides to do this occasionally. So Grant Thompson versus Morgrim Shadow Shield is my big duel of the season and probably next season as well. I think they're only year 7 at this point.
Mm.
Uh, they have been rivals sort of in the SBDL already, had their little MVP race there, which was a very contested one. And this season, I fully expected them both to be the lead guys, especially since the Inferno surprisingly had not a lot of free agent pool with the major free agents. I thought that the combination of Shadow Shield and Witherspoon would be very enticing to join as a free agent, but none major active joined them besides regressing Lucas Wagner, and now
Deontay
Shadow Shield
Verschal.
has to be the man. And the same can be said for Thompson in a different sense that the Ravens obviously always have that free agent pool. They signed Levante King to mitigate some of the loss of Peyton Wright, but the dynamic of the team remains the same. It's Grant Thompson that they are looking to offensively to score the ball, and so far he has done so pretty well, if you might say that, with 46 points per game on 64% shooting. Just a monster start from him. I expect him to go down a little on those points, but maybe he's able to stay above the 40 this season. And together with some decent defense and the Ravens probably being one of the favorites to make the finals this season, I see Thompson having a slight edge over Shadow Shield in the MVP race this season.
Yes, with Grant Thompson, it's very reminiscent of high volume scorers, even on the Houston Ravens team a few years back with João Walker Santos, with only 9.9 turnover percentage and still a whopping 36.3 usage rate. Um, every time he touches the ball, I suppose the shot's going up. There's no ifs or buts about it, and it's worked out well. Which was actually a topic I had laid out for this is Grant Thompson's scoring spree and the sort of confident roster construction that Houston has here with Scott Carter starting and there's still being room for a like a 40 plus point scorer on the team. What do you take it as? Do you think it's just a matter of circumstance or um, actually like trying to go into this direction where you have more of a one man centric offense that's sort of worked out well for a couple of teams in the past, but not always been successful in the later round of the playoffs?
I think you've put it quite well. For the regular season, you definitely can succeed with one major score. We already had it last season with the Ravens. They won 66 points, with Thompson already being the main guy that's going to touch the ball, that's funneled through, especially considering when you have like Shock and Wright and yeah, maybe now King if he adds some passing, just passing the ball down low, and Brooklyn Moore deep just taking not many shots but efficient shots. It can very well work out, but in the playoffs, those teams have historically struggled quite a bit, and you're more used to seeing teams with more of a balanced attack winning out because you can easily stomach one of your main options not going off. Like even the Ravens of Jaws and Eol especially and Sebastian Steele were always not completely funneling through Jaws. Jaws was putting up I think 30 a career high 31 points per game in his MVP season. And yeah, he was a great player. He was making every shot he took, but he wasn't the only one on the team taking shots. And I think that's important if you're looking to make a deep playoff run.
Yeah, of course, it's all only very early in the season, but when you're looking for supplementary scoring, when you're projecting this team into the playoffs, I find it very unlikely that Scott Carter is going to hold on to a 708 true shooting percentage, whereas
Yeah,
Lavonte
very
King,
unlikely.
yeah, whereas Lavonte King and Brooklyn Muad'Dib both are in the low 600s. So I expect to see some like progression from Lavonte King during the season, but obviously for Scott Carter, it's gonna go down heavily. I feel like, um, and it's not even like outlier. 3 point shooting is only shooting 23 of 54, so for 42.6%. It's just the only 2 point shots he's ever taken are probably wide open dunks and layups since he's finished 84% of his inside field goal attempts. So yeah, in the playoff situation with Ravens are very familiar with this, of course, with Joe Cooper. Obviously, Cooper worked a little bit more of an inside-out game on all levels of scoring, whereas Thompson is generally regarded as a inside scorer with 300 field goal attempts already this season, and 237 of those being straight inside field goal attempts. So for Thompson's game might maybe progress better into the playoffs, same as Ja Walker Santos, but they're gonna need more from Muad'Dib and King in the playoffs if they're gonna get to the top of the mountain. I feel
I mean, I still see the Ravens as the best team probably this season.
even a best playoff team.
For the playoffs, they will have to look for, as you said, especially King and Wright, I would say, because Wright can fill that Sebastian Steele type of role that they had on their last championship teams. And King was the main scorer, I think, for the Vipers last season, and did pretty well, and has had a pretty decent season so far for a small forward, and could go further up. So I think those are the two the Houston Ravens are especially looking to provide secondary scoring behind Thompson.
Yes, just to provide a little bit of context here, in season 57, Lavonte King was indeed the top scorer on the Atlanta Vipers with um, only a 632 shooting percentage on a usage rate of double that the current number feels like. Yeah, well, actually, one like 40% higher. So yeah, there's room for growth certainly with lower usage rate, and they have a couple of really good passers on this team with both Carter, Wright, and well, now Muad'Dib has no investment in passing. I was thinking of someone else, but yeah, he should be getting his percentages up there. Is what I'm trying to say, basically. Which, and then by the time of their first playoff series, we'll actually get a grip on how it works out for them. Since yeah, in the past it's been pretty rare to see a one man sort of show, offensive show to be ultimately successful. But since I first went through the top teams in each division, the first set conversation point was going to be top teams in both offense and defense. In the offense, you have, after 14, 13, 12 games, the Charlotte Aviators leading the offensive rating charts with 121. Then the Pittsburgh Ironmen, previous season's top offense with 119.4. I think the Ironman schedule so far has not been as challenging. Well, the Aviator schedule has also not been as challenging as, but they're both very talented teams regardless. So I expect them to be around the top here. And then you have the Arizona Inferno in number at the number 3 spot, just slightly below the Pittsburgh Ironman. Um, Do you think this is a fair reflection of the team's talents, or do you think it's more of a reflection on who's played who so far in this short amount of time?
I'll be honest, I expect the Ironman to cool down a good bit over the coming sims, especially Frost, who has been shooting on like 62% from the field as a point guard, uh, which is a crazy number. So I expect this offense to cal calm down a bit, but they would still be a very good offense. Same for the Aviators. There's a lot of change involved right now, more of an offensive push with Scotty Bishop now in a full-time starting role instead of the 20 something minutes he played last season. And yeah, for the Inferno, they will have to live through their front court through Fairchild, who is fairly regressed by now, but still a serviceable player, especially on the offensive end, and Morgan Shadow Shield, who's, as we already said, the guy for the Inferno and a pretty good one at that with his newly added 3-point shot. So I could see those three stay on top. Maybe the Ravens push into it once they figure things out for the deeper playoff push, but yeah, I pretty much see those three remaining on top.
Yeah, I probably should have mentioned the Houston Ravens as well, who are in fourth place with 118 flat offensive rating. And then there's a sort of a noticeable gap already to the um, Milwaukee Maulers, who are at 114.4, and then a further gap to the Boston Minutemen and Toronto Thunderbirds, who are in the low 110s with 111.9 and 111.8. So yeah, even if this is sort of a reflection on their schedule so far, it looks like the talent overrides a lot of it with the top four teams here. Where you mentioned about the Pittsburgh Ironmen maybe cooling off later. The Ironmen were the top offense in the league last year. Why do you think it's gonna um, be more competitive
Slow
this time
down.
around?
Well, especially if I look at the team, and I only glanced over the shooting percentages, but most of those percentages are a decent step higher than they were last season. I mentioned Frost's unparalleled shooting splits for point guard. I don't think we had a point guard with that volume shoot 54% from 3-point land over a whole season. That's probably not holding up at this point.
Would be
So
cool though.
would be cool, but I don't think it's happening. Harris has produced at the same rate, so I expect him to stay there. But Cannon has also made like a 3% jump, which could be sustainable, maybe. But when I look at his past numbers, I still expect some regression to the mean with him. And so I think they will not maintain their current pace. They will still be like, I expect them to be like a 117 offensive efficiency team, but uh, yeah, a bit slower than right now.
Hmm. Yeah, if I had to pick, I would probably expect it to be between the Aviators and Ravens for the top spot come the end of the season. But if Inferno and Ironman sort of hold up there, like if their secondary and tertiary players actually keep up their great work so far this season, it can be anyone's game in there. On the defensive side, we have in the top four in defense, we have two of the same teams as we had on the top four in offense. It's Houston Ravens number one with 99.9 defensive rating, then the Miami Vice in second place 102.2, then the Seattle Knights 103.5, and then the Pittsburgh Ironmen and Vancouver Wolverines with 103.7 and 104.2. Uh, what do you think of the defensive rating standings? Then, do you think it's a fair reflection on the team talent or not?
I don't know about you, but the Ravens are the best defensive team in the league, in my opinion. That's their calling card, which is why they can afford to just run things through Thompson, which is also working pretty efficiently so far. And I expect to continue on efficiently throughout the season, but the defense is their real differentiator. If you look at them between them and like a team like the Inferno are also a good team, but not as good defensively as the Ravens are from 1 to 5.
Mm.
The Vice I expect to get worse in terms of defensive rating over the season. They have been a pretty good defensive squad over the last couple of seasons, if my memory serves me right, but I don't see the defensive talent on their team to uphold such a rating, or at least the relative standing uh, of themselves in that ladder. Same for the Knights. I don't see them continue on where they are currently, even though they have added Ronnie, who was a pretty good defender for the league's best defense last season in the Aviators. So maybe they surprise me here. Iron Man, I could see staying there. Uh, they're about right. But I expect maybe someone like the Vipers to push up those efficiency ratings over the upcoming sims and establish themselves in like at least hover around the top 5 spot.
For the Vipers, they've already had losses this season to the Knights there, and then to the Vice, Corsairs, and the Jokers so far, and oh yeah, and the Aviators. So 5 losses. They've given up 140 points or more twice, but also if the game is competitive, I feel like their game plan is sort of trying to muck the opposition up and like take it slow rather than get 100 or more field goal attempts each game. So not that big of run and gun style, but I think sometimes if a team has good offensive execution, the slower pace, if the opposition also play at a slower pace, then they can actually work the motion and whatever to get a better shot. So I think where the Vipers stand right now at ninth is not a perfect assessment, as in the standings position. Like they're not, to me, the ninth best defense in the league, but it's pretty packed through 9 to 13, and the jump from ninth to seventh isn't entirely unreasonable, which is where I would have expected them to be between sixth and 10th in defense. So it's sort of a fair assessment, but then also as you said, I expect them to have some room for improvement there. Who do you think is going to be well, if you think the Ravens are obviously the best defense in the league, who do you think is going to be the second best when it all is said and done?
I could see the Wolverines push for that second spot. I mean, Jeff obviously knows how to run a good defense, how to set up a good defense with builds, as he did with the Teal Curtain back in the 40s. They have some rookies like Joe Young getting significant playing time and a bunch of other young players, which might prevent that, but I could see them make a push for it, at least.
Yeah, I think they would be very lucky to be the second best defense in the league. And what you said about the Vice, where you don't see the talent, on the contrary, I see a lot of the talent because their three front court players, Amaru, Vakarian, and Marcus, are all defense level players. And whereas the Polyhronidis and McDougall and the fillers might struggle here and there, I think three players cleaning up everyone else's mess is much better than, say, Marcus being the sole defensive star where he was last season. I think Vakarian was still coming into his own, last season by the numbers. Obviously, his attributes were very good last season, but maybe got unlucky or uh, riddled with a weird game plan or whatever. But yeah, I think Amaru, Vakarian, and Marcus is a good uh, backbone for a great defense. So they might as well end up being the second best defense, in my opinion.
I mean, those two are certainly one of the better big man duos we have in the league right now, especially with the cap forcing around so many moves, so much parity, as one might say. With a lot of teams, a lot of contenders having to ship away guys, have to let go guys in free agency. And so I think they're up there in the discussion with, yeah, with the Ravens front court, or who else? Maybe the Aviators, but I'm biased on that. And the Jokers certainly have a good front court.
Hmm. Yeah, and the Brooklyn Bullets front court is also quite interesting, but Jack Ryan has now started his regression seasons. Thomas Taylor sort of has that weird cheap player, great defense vibes, but it's not at all close to the prime players that you'd see on the Vice or the Ravens or even the Aviators for that matter. So for our, I think now that means it's gonna be our third topic. It would have been the second topic, but we jumped the queue here. Lottery bound teams plenty. It's already obvious for quite a few teams that they're not going to be any good this season, which I sort of hate because I don't like reading game scores that you expect your team to lose, and usually also expect your team to lose by more than 20 points, sometimes even by 40 points. Looking at the bottom of the standings right now, it's the Los Angeles Rush in last place with 1 win in 11 games, and then you have the St. Louis Battalion with 1 win in 10 games, the Colorado Chiefs with 1 win in 10 games, and the Montreal Monarchs with 2 wins in 11 games. What do you take, or what do you think of each team's direction where they're headed, and who do you think is the top prize in the SBA entry draft of season 59?
Okay, let me get to the teams first. So the Rush certainly are all in on providing Cooper yet another 35 plus points per game season or whatever, by tanking and establishing just some players that can pass him the ball around him. Let's call it the Baramy route that he undertook more or less with the Vipers in his prime, where he
Hmm.
put up that 47 points per game this season. It's similar for Cooper, just that Cooper is not as good anymore to put up 47 points a night. Um, I dislike that they didn't sell off Creek last season, even though he was year 8, I think, that was set to retire at the end of the season. I think you could have at least gotten something for him from a contending team or whatever, looking to have that last push. Instead, you just let him play out his last season and now are stuck with nothing for your rebuild. With, I think, Dustin Claviter is their
Young
only
player,
active
yeah.
player beside Cooper on the roster. So you're starting from scratch now and don't have a lot of assets besides your own draft pick going forward. The Battalion, I didn't like their selection of Thomas in the draft. I think there were better players there, especially going forward. You can always find a scorer in the SBA, especially in the current day and age. Half the league wants to be scorers, so I would prioritize guys that will be impact defenders, and a double 80 stealing and blocking cap is not an impact defender to me. So they would try to reload around him. I like the trade for Graves, which was a bad trade for the Wild in my opinion. trading Terry for Graves because Terry has said that he doesn't want to play on a winning team. And that's all fine and such, but why do you trade your GM player for that player? For
Yeah.
someone you will have to trade on again as soon as you get halfway successful, and Terry won't really help you become successful in the first place. So for the Battalion, good trade. For the Wild, not as good, in my opinion, the least. And the Wild have had a better start than the rest of the four we are talking about right now. But they're also not great looking for the future, but that's a different topic. Chiefs, I'm actually surprised to see them that low. I thought they were a better team that they are showing right now. They have some weird talent in the sense of there are decent players, but no top of the top players or top of the top talent in terms of super max earning on the roster. Yet I still expect them to at least push for 20, maybe 25 wins for the season and not remain in that absolute tank race that's going on down there. And the Monarchs had a pretty decent offseason for the first season under new management, getting in buckets, getting in, I think, some more talent over trades or at least some first picks for the upcoming drafts. And they're heading in the right direction. They will tank the season as was to be expected, more or less, with all this young talent. But I think the future for them could be looking really good if they stick to their plan.
Right. Let's just go through one at a time. I also think that the Rush sort of missed an opportunity to get even a little something for an MVP caliber player in Coco Creek last season. And we've already discussed my end of the negotiations like 3 times on this podcast, so I'm not gonna go into that further. But indeed, sort of a disappointing turn to sell off almost everyone, but then not move the biggest prize out of them all, and then being stuck with this Claviter, Cooper, Minion, Wall Jr., Kemper starting lineup. It's not very well. We
Very
don't
good.
we don't need to yeah we don't need to take into consideration fans and ticket sales, but I don't think not many people would be uh, re applying for a season ticket at this rate.
You
Uh,
wouldn't want to watch old star just chucking up shot after shot. I mean, he's been making for still over 50% of them, but
yeah, but since it's like it's like the episode 6 of Joe Cooper in Regression. I bet
yeah,
if he was still in Vancouver, the fans would still love it, the imaginary fans. But now this is like the regression of regression, where you need to go somewhere else because you're not even wanted in the team you grew up in. So, mm, difficult to say. Maybe Los Angeles, obviously a tourist destination, so maybe it's just by name cachet would bring in uh, people who are not regular fans of the Rush, but it is what it is. It sounds like when the Los Angeles Clippers used to sign all the players that the Los Angeles Lakers didn't want anymore. Like so that obviously they play in the same stadium or same arena in real life, so they still got the same sort of a customer base, but it is what it is. So yeah, for the Battalion, I agree on the trade. I don't think Thomas is as bad of a pick. I think uh, it's more than manageable if you have one player who only has 80 and 80 in steals and blocking, since it's been proven time and time again when you have teams where you have a second year player starting and making the finals, even winning the championship, or a first year player starting and making the finals, or a third year player who maybe only has, say, 85 steals and 35 blocking. I don't think it's any worse than or that's any better than 80 steal and 80 blocking. I think it's all the same. It's a wash in that front. But for your 1,500 eventual a star player obviously brings the value down a little, but possibly if you can get your true shooting percentages to the high 60s and maybe add some playmaking, it's not going to be that bad. But that's
Yeah, he's
still,
still going to be a good player. Like
yeah,
Maddie will max earn for the foreseeable future, I imagine. But I don't like the prospect when he had some other, but we'll get to this at some other point, I'm
yeah,
sure
it's
as
still
well.
many, many seasons away of how good of a player he'll actually be. And yeah, the trade for Graves, I think it's a very good trade. No problems there. I'll give it a plus. For the Chiefs, I also expect. I've been looking at them closely. Of course, I hold the Colorado Chiefs first round selection in the next draft. So 1-9 start is excellent news. I also thought they wouldn't be this coming into the season, but yeah, like you said, they maybe don't have a player who could drive the play. They have 6 players scoring in double digits, which isn't abnormal. But then you also have 2 players scoring 20 points a game, and that's 20.9 for Kowalski and 20.5 for Redding. And only Takao is an actual playmaker in terms of passing and assisting on field goals. So it's gonna be difficult, at least for the first 2 weeks. It looks like, unless they find a like course to correct on. And yeah, for the Monarchs, it's been a difficult time. Obviously, I was drafted to the Montreal Monarchs some years back, and
Famously.
yeah, or infamously, rather, drafted number 3 and never playing a game. Oh well, I think it's preseason.
Yeah, I think you might have played some games before the trade went
Yeah,
down.
yeah, preseason for sure. Because I don't remember. I remember the Monarchs had not set a game plan for preseason, so I had to do it myself, and I wanted to give time for the uh, other young guys, of which none seem to be on the team any longer. Maybe Evo Upcoming was there then. Yeah, looks like he was on the bench. But
I think
yeah,
he was drafted in the same year
yeah,
as we did.
yeah, I think
So
so too. Yeah, so they were in the middle of a rebuilding situation then, and I didn't want to stay there because it was in the middle of a rebuilding situation. And now 3 seasons onwards, they're starting another rebuild. I would be hard pressed to say I made a wrong decision or acted um, out of order, because it wasn't difficult to foresee difficulties in the next few seasons, but I didn't foresee this sort of difficulties. And yeah, hopefully they can this time build on with bumpy buckets and Evo and Stephen Ruiz, although there's some questions about those two latter players. Yeah. So the other part of the question was, who do you think is the biggest prize in this upcoming SBA entry draft?
that's a bit of a tough one. I mean, rumors are that Engine is not going to take his player to the SBA, so let's eliminate him for this question, which to me makes it pretty much a toss-up between Steve Latimer and, oh god, now my pronunciation
Rauta
is going to be
Persson.
challenged. Rautapes. I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Those two, both season pass guys, so at least as long as they keep paying for the season pass, they're going to be the max earners. I like the caps, especially on Perse, for the future. Good scoring, big man that will give you a lot of, yeah, also a lot of defense. And I hope it's becoming the next Curtis Davis and wins another 3 dunk contests. Um, but yeah, I think one of those two is probably the biggest prize. Alexei is also highly up there in TPE, but the build has some questions behind it. I love that he's going to try this build because I had a similar one in my backlog for quite a while, but couldn't bring myself to try it out over my current player. Now, if he adds some passing onto it and some rebounding and defense, then this build can very much succeed as well, even without any athletics. But as a GM, you're probably more hesitant to take him than those other two.
Hmm. Yeah, this is this is notion that I've heard quite a bit actually, and where we just were talking about some of these teams down in the bottom of the standings. I feel like even with some of these anomalies in player building and questions about if this is going to work or not, I don't think some of these teams are going to have a problem picking a player like this in fourth or third or well, yeah, he was in the pecking order as third now with Engine, possibly not going to the SBA. So yeah, like a team like the Rush, uh, don't know what they'd prefer. A player like the Sadesky or then a more of a traditional player who could maybe be more effective already in 2 seasons rather than maybe wait 4 or 5. I'm just not sure if the value proposition is so straightforward as just to look at the caps and project to the future, since the future is obviously ways away.
Yeah, that's for sure. But looking at the draft class, you as a GM, are you getting worried about the lack of guards that's coming in, especially point guards that are not GM players? Because I've had this thought when I looked at the current season and noticed that we are pretty much running out on top point guards compared to when I was still a guard in the 40s. Like, we already had a limited field when Banks was on his run, and now it's looking like it's the still relatively young guards of Frost and Villano and Pablo da Silva Taylor being the top dogs for the next few seasons because there's no guards above them, and even below them in the draft classes there are not as many guards.
Um,
Are you worried
yes,
about that becoming a thing?
yes, and no. Obviously, because Cassandra Frost plays for the Pittsburgh Ironmen, I have no worry in the world on that front, since it's he's under contract or she's under contract, and there's nothing for me to worry about for the foreseeable future. But in general, yes, there is one point guard eligible player who's not tied to a team by the JM rule in the top 25 players, and VKOB's player Duck Go Quack I think is going to be a filler. Unless, oh well, actually I think Leroy is set to retire. I'm not sure. Regardless, I think yeah, it would be a problem, but I'm not worried about it since I have Cassandra Frost under contract.
And true, but it's a bit of a weird thing because we mostly got freak point guards running around these days.
Yeah, there's also KC15's Arlo Danielson and Kitschai's Raven Ashton Oya. So yeah, there's two more. Actually missed them. Uh, But yeah, 3 point guard eligible players who are not tied by the GM rule is uh, it's not enough generally. But if it's three each season, then it's sort of all right. That'll eventually fill up teams when you also have the GM players who need to play somewhere at least.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just interested to see if we will see an overcorrection at some point.
Well,
Like, it feels like the small forward has seen in recent years with guys even saying they only want to play small forward, like a certain recent drafty.
a little bit of a a bit of a dumb idea there, but
I mean, I
it's
can dig it. I had a similar feeling when I started out as well. Uh, it's just that the stats trade-off sometimes isn't as good as you want it to be,
no,
but you can certainly
I
find
don't have a
success.
problem with someone wanting to play a specific position. I just think it's weird that you'd pick small forward since it's the least effective offensive position in the game, and thus, if you're playing just a man-on-man defense, it's also the least important defensive position in the game. So, yeah, sure, go ahead. Jack Robinson is about to win 3 small forward of the years in a row, and I also would have
Could
won
could make it 4.
four.
I mean,
Four?
he has 2 under the belt now and
Oh,
still
still
got 2
two seasons to
seasons
go.
left.
Yeah, yeah. So
So,
four,
could
and I had the opportunity to win three, except Breeze Breeze Ladrian sort of had like 14 assists a game and shot 66 through shooting. So I was unfortunately had to give up one of those. So yeah, the competition at the small forward position is not um, very diverse at the moment, but yeah, it might end up being a bigger focus for everyone involved, which is sort of good. But I just think I, I think if people are just making their players and in the and having an expectation of chasing awards, they need to have a lot of foresight, like an extreme amount of foresight. If you see the current situation now and think, wow, Jack Robinson has all he can eat at the small forward position, then maybe in 1 or 2 seasons, if you create a small forward, you'd eventually end up in the same position. But if you created a small forward 2 seasons ago, everyone is going to be in the same clump, and then you have suddenly 9 small forwards who are at their peak prime years at 7 and 8 at the same time. So you need to have a lot of foresight, and generally it's better to just do what you like and then make the best out of that rather than solely create a player for the purpose of winning certain awards or winning as many awards, or even in some cases chasing certain statistics, since there's a lot of variables that go into that. But yeah, I think there's every time there's some sort of a correction back and forth. Back in the back some 20 seasons ago, everyone wanted to be a point guard, and then few seasons after that, everyone wanted to be a freak point guard because they saw the value in Clyde Alexander and Ray Zonley and Senna Sharp and Masato Miyamoto famously. Uh, so there were less and less good power forwards and centers, which eventually, I think my player won the MVP award in his 6th season. Let's see
yeah,
here.
I think something like that. You won the MVP, then one more season in Seattle, then Philadelphia, something
Yes.
like that.
45. Oh no, so defensive player of the year in year 6, then MVP in year 7, and then ended career after year 8. But yeah, generally it's if the positional spectrum was completely filled evenly, then it usually mean that you'd have a year 8 player winning the MVP each time. And if everyone was as adept and had the same approach to team building as well. But this the way it's gone right now, it's going to be it's gone a little bit back and forth each time, where the APE dominance has fell, and with uh, at the time or some time ago where there were a lot of shooting guard and point guard freaks, it's more difficult to say where in the positional scale the AP strength lies, since they can play almost any position at a time. So it's just based on what the other players on their rosters ended up being. So some players like Orlando Viloria, for example, I think he's won a All League first team spot in both small forward and power forward. or shooting
I
guard,
think it was
and
shooting guard
shooting
and
guard.
power forward.
And Colton Caesar almost did the same at shooting guard and center, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the major, at least in my opinion, a major reason for the rise in popularity that the Freaks have had. That you have this positional versatility. In theory, can slide to a spot where you could compete for an award or fit onto the team you're looking for. Which is why we have pretty much every recreate, at least it feels like it, going for a freak build.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if I'm just being cynical, but that also goes back to the award hunting mentality that when you can play every 5 positions, then you can sort of pick and choose where you can go depending on who's strong this season and who's not, and you know what I mean. Like if there was no Jack Robinson, then someone like Shaka Banks could have easily just gave up on the 7 point guard of the year stream and instead won almost seven small forwards of the year. Just saying no, I want to play small forward, or staying on as a general manager and playing himself as small forward. So yeah, but I think more or less people are just happy that they can fill more roles than just one or two roles by being a freak with positional versatility.
Yeah, certainly.
So for our next topic, there's some interest in the previous draft class and the current rookies in the SBA. Who do you think have been so far in the first 2+ preseason sims the rookie players taking on a starting role and actually being sort of adequate in their current team predicaments?
I'm impressed what Perkovic has been doing for the Nightmare so
Mm-hmm.
far. Lot of scoring opportunities, obviously, with the way the team is constructed, but he's done well so far to convert it. And maybe he can follow up on this Cooper-esque part that he wants to pursue. I mean, starting off his rookie season with 30 something points per game. I don't know if that has been done since Scola. I would have to dig through some old indexes. Um, Besides him, as biased as I am about that, Leon Lundell has had a great start so far with, I think, 3 to 4 blocks per game, 6 assists per game, 60 something shooting from the field. For a team that looks to make the playoffs as a starter, nothing to complain about there. I think beside that, I don't know if anyone has really jumped out to me yet. I know some others have like a major role, like Thomas obviously for the battalion, or Bridges in a hotly contested trade that I would love to rant about because it's a weird trade in my opinion still. Um, but I think Lundell and Perkovic have so far been the best two rookies in those first few sims.
Yeah, I also like Nicholas Gale a fair bit. 13 points per game, 12.4 assists per game, and a 604 true shooting percentage, which is not, which is a huge improvement on his teammate, who's granted given a lot more responsibility. Friendly Hermit only at 512 true shooting percentage so far this season. But Gale being an effective playmaker and sort of an effective guard scorer slash spot up shooter, I've liked his start to the season a lot so far.
I mean, 12.4 assists is certainly nothing to sneeze at in this regard. I think Hermit will need some time to get his build back together because, in my opinion, his build wasn't great in the SBDL. It worked; they went to the finals in the end, but he could have be, or he could be at a different stage right now already. Um, but that's how things are with first gens. Like my own guy wasn't very good for his first 2 seasons.
What did you not like about this build in the coming into the SBA?
I mean, he has a lot of TPE and then has a lot of volume, like high 3 point shot, high inside, but he was just simply lacking the athletics to convert on the opportunities that were given to him. Especially with a low jumping, his player wanted to always drive to the inside, but never was strong enough or good enough to get past his opponents, and then ended up just chugging up a jump shot or something similar. So I think you could either have focused more on going inside or going as an efficient scorer, or you could have taken more to the defensive side, where he is serviceable with his stealing and post and Purdy. But I think there are just some efficiency gains you could have realized already.
Yeah,
Maintaining the ball.
yeah, I like the shot profile though of 19 field goal attempts per game. 10.2 of those are from 3 point range. So if the uh, percentage of his 3 point accuracy sort of mimic the general percentage that we see of a player who has 85 quickness and 93 point shooting, he'd look a lot better. But I think there's some shooting luck or early season fuckery going on instead. Like I expect Hermit to end the season at around say 41% through the 3 point shooting, and if the um, shot locations stay the same, that's gonna mean a massive bump in efficiency too. If you shoot over half your shots from 3 point range and make them at a 40, 41, 42% clip, that's going to be really good for their offense. But yeah, small forward position is very tricky since they're coming off ball into the offensive sets a lot. And sometimes the passes in the play by play, it says to the free throw line, flashes to the free throw line. It's not just what you think in real life basketball terms, that either you are in the corner or you're bringing the ball up the court, or then you're just flaring up from the corner through screens up to the 3 point line. It's a lot more different in the game when they sort of get the ball at the free throw line or even some posts up, which for a 6'6" guy who has 35 jump shot and 77 strength, it's not going to be too efficient, I don't think, post ups. So yeah, I think Hermit is due for a little bit better shooting numbers as well this season. But Gale has been alongside that Berkovic and um, well, not Bridges, but Berkovic in general. I think Gale has had a very good start to the season. What were your thoughts on the trade? And I just thought it was weird mismanagement by the Boston general manager, where you had a week beforehand, you had this grand idea of I need to pick these players so that we can move forward and then we'll have a great team in just a few seasons. And then 2 days later, he was um, messaging me while I was sleeping that no, I could actually take a player in return for these young stars, which was very weird. I think there's obviously some personal uh, misalignment behind the scenes, but also, yeah, the return in the trade, all of it seemed pretty weird. So, what were your thoughts on?
I mean, I can only speculate on the reasons for the change of mind initially. My suggestion or my perceived reason was that especially Oscar and Zeke both wanted to play a specific position, that being point guard and small forward, respectively, and play that with a lot of minutes. And due to the talent that's currently that was on the Boston Minutemen, this was not really possible. And so instead of risking two disgruntled youngsters, which at least one of them has a reputation to not holding back when he's disgruntled, um, he decided to ship them off. And I mean, he got some decent players in return, especially Virgin Tall. I'm a big fan of his, and then Dallas Brucker, who has always been pretty good for the Thunderbirds in the last 2 seasons and has been a major force behind uh, their rise. But I don't get this move for both sides. They are now both stuck in this middle ground where your team is in theory good enough to make the playoffs, but it won't take you any further and it's only temporarily. Like Toronto gave up its last chance of competing, especially around Adekoya, and I don't know who they have left, like Taylor, um, because you won't win a championship, you won't make a deep run with an Oscar Chibazalan Jr., a Bridges Jr., and an LPLP starting on your team. You're
Mm.
not going to make this deep run. And same for Boston, even though if they retain Tall and Brucker, who I think has gone inactive this season, they have a bit more time, like I think 2 seasons or something like that, so they could maybe get to the point where they can challenge the top guys. But for at least this season and next season, I don't see them being a real threat to like a Ravens team. And then you're stuck without those guys, or they are regressing, and suddenly you're back to square one where you have some up and coming guys on your team, like Wally Herman Jr. at that point, then, but no one else to surround them with. So choose a direction, not do this weird mishmash thing, because barely making the playoffs or being a mediocre playoff team won't attract any free agents. That's not how free agency works in the SBA, at least to what I experienced over the last couple of seasons.
If you were in the position where your players who you invested some good resources into wanted to play a specific role, like you said, point guard and small forward, and you finished 17 wins and 65 losses in the previous season, uh, what would be your like your own justification not to acquiesce and just make the team so that they could play point guard and small forward, since there's just no way where you draft a highly sought after rookie and you just go from 17 wins to 65 wins instead. Like, what do you think is the reason that they couldn't have accommodated Oscar and Zeke to play their positions?
I mean, do I understand you right that you said why not accommodate those two? It's not like you would have done better anyways.
Yeah, like I think they're in a worse position now than they would have been by trading away everyone else and just letting Oscar and Zeke play where they wanted to play. Since
Certainly.
that's very easy to do in my opinion. So I think there's also some sort of some another hidden problem that's not as public as just playing these positions because we want to.
I mean, maybe at least Adrest knows those guys. They have their little Discord server. I don't remember the name. It used to be the Goat Squad, then it transformed into something else. So he knows those guys. Maybe he had doubts about them staying, even if he accommodated them. I don't know.
Mm.
Um, but if I personally, if you do not accommodate them and decide to trade them, I would have looked to secure another young player instead. Like it's not like those two players are losing value. They are still max earners. They are still going to be pretty good. So why not just not good with you, good with your situation, whatever. So why not try to get someone else, young guy, for your guy? We have seen this in the past when the Nightmare and Inferno switched Dell Williams and ooh,
Othello
Othello
Hawkins.
Hawkins.
Yeah.
I knew the user, I didn't know the player right away because he had so
Yes.
many MVPs. Um, but yeah, when they traded those two were the number one and number two pick from their draft class, from the same draft class, and they basically just switched them around for
Positional
Flake
need.
a bit, I think.
Yeah.
or Odell was able to play small forward and power forward, something like that.
Yes.
So they both had a decent trade, in my opinion, there because they traded equal value, just what was fitting their team better. And I think that's something that Boston should have pursued instead of we are going all in now. We are trying to make the playoffs content. Sure, making the playoffs is great, especially when your team hasn't had the success in the last couple of seasons. But sacrificing your path to the future for it is not necessarily as great.
Generally forgettable Othello Hawkins, of course, where you couldn't remember who the best or second best player of the past 10 years was. But it is what it is. Yeah, just last touch on this one. Currently, the Minutemen are 6th in offense, 17th in defense, and the Thunderbirds are 7th in offense and 18th on defense. So not really making hay for either side as of yet. I obviously think the Thunderbirds are in a bit of a better position, but not for the immediate future. No, I think Adekoya is a top player in this league, but all his teammates are nothing compared to the teammates he had when they were in the finals. Well, except Alex Taylor, who was in the finals with him. But
I was about to say Taylor is a pretty good big,
hmm.
and still young. I think he's like year 5, year 6, something along those lines. But yeah, as you said, Adekoya is a top guy, but you won't win. Especially, I'm not a fan of Oscar's build so far. Defense is at least he has some perimeter and post defense, but there's still things that don't mesh well so far,
Seems
in my
very
opinion.
reminiscent of his first player, actually. Let's see.
Yeah, I mean it's a junior, so
Yeah, no
of course
wonder.
he's got more blocking on him than he did on the senior, I think.
Mm.
Uh, but yeah, we will see. He can surely grow into a dominant force at the guard position, just not for this season. And this season is where Toronto's last chance with a prime Adekoya is. So
Mm. Yeah, and just quick hit on our final topic of this week's episode is who do you think was the best free agent acquisition in the off season, or who do you think will prove to be the best free agent acquisition? I'm not counting any sort of sign and trade stuff or that, just plain free agents. So that would be um, Alice Bracker went to his previous team, and in the Aviators team, the Valdivia was traded, and
yeah,
Ekstrom returned. Matsui is possibly the highest AP player who changed teams via plain free
yeah, I think
agency, but
Wright and Matsui were the two top
yeah, yeah,
players
right.
in terms of APE.
So who do you think, and yeah, who do you think is gonna be proved to be the best signing? It could even be Xavier May Jones if you can make a case for it. I just don't
I
think.
mean, for this season alone, I am biased in this, but I think Matsui is a pretty good signing because he pushes OKC into that playoff team caliber. Uh, Beside that, I think Mac is also a pretty good get for the Vipers. It's again a guy that can score efficiently, plays good defense, and passes the ball a bit, and that fits well into the game plan. They still don't have this designated pure scorer on the team, but I think they will succeed either way. So Mac and Matsui are to me the two top signings.
Yeah, I don't. It's very early to say. Obviously, the Brooklyn Bullets are 5 of 7, and the Rampage are not far better so far. 6 and 5 on the season so far. So it's difficult to say even of those two teams who eventually ends up better off. I think it's going to be the Rampage by a small margin, but Peyton Wright obviously then joined the Brooklyn Bullets was what I was getting at here. And for the Ocelots, I think they didn't
Yeah,
get anyone.
they signed Has.
Oh yeah,
Um,
Petronitis, but they don't seem poised to become a higher tier team this season, even with that addition there. So I'm not
yeah,
sure
I
what to
don't
think.
see them making the playoffs. Maybe they can get in at a low seed, but it's rather unlikely. Uh, because he doesn't fix the problems that they had. The defense is still around the same level, even though he is a pretty good defensive player, at least from the numbers. I don't believe in this perimeter defense only scheme they currently have. And as you know, I struggled with this year's defensive player of the year selection, but that's a different topic we're not going to roll out today.
Mm. Yeah, and for the top teams, for the Ravens, they signed May Jones and Lavonte King was a
He was a
free
free agent.
agent contract. Yeah. So there's some smoke there, and then the aforementioned players like Fairchild and Lucas Wagner, but uh, they sort of seem like role players with Witherspoon and Shadow Shield being the obvious stars on the team. And then for the Ironman, there's only Grayson Boudreaux, which is not gonna shake the world around, I don't think.
I mean, is Stax active again? Or
Yes and no. It seems like he has a lot of stuff to do in Caboose's sim league, which is weird since I thought it was Caboose's sim league. But yeah, it's whatever. I don't really care for that. I checked it out and it was cool, but I really don't care for gridiron football these days, so I'm not specifically gonna join. But yeah, he's in the room and I was talking to him since I got him to sign the contract instead of going through the waivers.
I mean, Stax is cool.
Yeah, Stacks is
Definitely
cool.
one
Yeah.
of the more chill persons in the Simlic community.
Mm.
Why I thought it was a shame when he showed up as inactive in the list, but glad that he's still around, I guess, even though he isn't going to pay for a season pass or something like that.
Yeah, so I think our vote is gonna go to either Lavonte King if he picks up his game, or then the already forgot who you mentioned. Rampage Matsui, yeah, Matsui Jr. Not sure who to pick right now. For me, I think Matsui is obviously a better player with larger reputation, but we'll see how it turns out in the end. We'll maybe take a look at it after the season's over. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, King helped the Ravens fill their little void they had for a second there
Hmm.
when they had to let go Wright for cap reasons once again.
Yeah. All right. With that, I think we're through most of it. It's already gone into the danger golden territory of over 1 hour of recording. I think it'll just be 1 hour 13 in full length as well. So thank you all for watching. And by Nepto, I will say, or he can say, he's still here.
My last words, yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks for
something.
tuning
Yeah.
in to hear my collector's rambling and Oko having to endure it all.
Yeah, I
And
just wasn't listening.
see you
It's
next
very
time.
easy when I can just press the button. I don't hear, and when I see your, is it Evan Fournier? Oh, that's someone else. Whatever. Whoever is in your icon, when it stop sliding up, I just kind of turn my volume back on, and yeah, whatever, yeah. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again, or never see you again. I don't know. I've never seen you next week.